My ex screamed at me in front of 50 people. You'll never amount to anything as a partner. I could never see myself with you long term. I stood there frozen, staring at her face twisted with contempt, then grabbed my coat and left without a single word. Hours later, my phone lit up with a text from her roommate. You have no idea what went down after you walked out, do you? I'm 31 now, and 3 weeks ago I believed my future was set in stone. I'd been together with Emma for nearly 5 years. We crossed paths at a rooftop barbecue thrown by a college buddy, connected instantly, and before half a year had passed, we'd signed a lease together. She worked as an executive assistant at a tech startup in the financial district. My career was in supply chain coordination. We weren't swimming in cash, but we were stable, building something. Marriage came up in our conversations regularly. We'd even browsed engagement rings together last spring. She'd fallen in love with this vintage emerald ring at an antique jewelry shop in Old Town, and I'd returned 3 days later without her knowledge to discuss payment plans with the owner. The evening everything collapsed was meant to be joyful. My brother-in-law David was hosting a celebration for his promotion at his place, a renovated loft in the arts district with exposed brick and industrial lighting, roughly 50 guests in attendance. Emma had seemed off the entire week leading up to it. Withdrawn, sharp-tongued, constantly on edge. I attributed it to pressure at work. She'd mentioned her supervisor was being unreasonable about some project milestones, and she'd been at the office past 9 p.m. 4 or 5 evenings that week. I'd even suggested bringing her Thai food one of those late nights, but she'd declined, saying she'd just order something from the place across the street. We showed up around 7:30. The celebration was already underway, electronic music pulsing from corner speakers, clusters of people scattered across the open floor plan and balcony area. I was in the middle of a conversation with David and some of my buddies near the kitchen counter when Emma approached holding a cocktail glass. Her cheeks were flushed pink, and I could immediately tell she'd consumed at least 3 drinks, possibly 4. We need to have a conversation, she announced, but her volume wasn't discreet or intimate. It was loud enough that David cut himself off mid-sentence and turned to stare at her. Absolutely, what's going on? I kept my tone measured, hoping to redirect this towards something manageable. I'm completely serious. We need to discuss our relationship. I scanned the room quickly. Heads were beginning to turn. David's girlfriend, Michelle, was observing from the other side of the loft with worry etched on her features. All right, let's step outside in. No, she interrupted sharply, her voice climbing higher. I'm exhausted from faking this. You know what? This isn't sustainable anymore. My stomach felt like it had dropped through the floor. The music suddenly seemed deafening. Emma, this really isn't the appropriate. You'll never amount to anything as a partner. I could never see myself with you long term. Every conversation in the entire loft stopped simultaneously. Every single person was watching us. I felt heat spread across my face, felt my fists clench automatically, but I maintained the most neutral expression I could force. I studied her face for several long seconds, trying to determine if the alcohol was talking or if this was genuine intent. Her eyes had this hardness to them, almost vindictive, like she was challenging me to react. I didn't recognize the woman standing before me. I said absolutely nothing. I simply pivoted, grabbed my jacket from the rack by the entrance, and walked straight out. Behind me, I caught someone whisper, "Did that really just happen?" Followed by the buzz of hushed voices starting up again, but softer now, speculative. I drove back to our place in total silence. No radio, no podcasts, just my own breathing and the engine's steady hum. My hands wouldn't stop trembling against the steering wheel. When I arrived at our apartment building, I sat on the sofa in complete darkness for close to an hour, just staring into nothing. The street lamp outside created shifting patterns across the ceiling. I kept mentally replaying the confrontation, searching for what I'd overlooked, what failure on my part had led to this. Then my phone vibrated. A text from Jessica, one of Emma's best friends from university. Do you even know what happened after you left? I stared at the screen for a full minute before typing back. What? 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, can I call you? Yeah. My phone rang within seconds. Hey, Jessica said, and her voice sounded strained, like she'd been crying recently or was struggling not to. I don't even know how to phrase this, but you deserve to know the truth. After you walked out, Emma completely fell apart, started sobbing, claiming she didn't mean any of it, that she was just terrified of commitment. But that's not even the worst revelation. What's the worst part? My voice sounded detached, like it belonged to someone else. Jessica paused. I could hear party sounds behind her, conversations, glasses clinking, music still playing. David's cousin, Ryan, was there tonight. You know Ryan, right? I did. Ryan was David's cousin from the West Coast, maybe 27 years old. Worked in venture capital. Always dressed in designer labels and talked too loudly about his investment returns and his CrossFit competitions. Yeah, I know who he is. Emma's been involved with him for at least 8 weeks. Maybe longer. I felt like gravity had ceased to exist. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What? I didn't have any clue until tonight. I swear to you, I had zero idea. After you left, Ryan approached Emma and attempted to console her. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and she melted into him like it was completely automatic. Not the way a friend comforts a friend, but like they were actually together. Then I heard him say quietly, "You promised me you were going to end it cleanly. This wasn't what we discussed." That's when everything clicked for me. I cornered her in the bathroom maybe 30 minutes ago. She confessed everything. I couldn't form words. My brain was attempting to process what I was hearing, but it felt completely surreal, like dialogue from a terrible drama. She said it began at some networking mixer Ryan attended in late summer. Jessica continued, filling the silence I'd left. They bumped into each other, started messaging, and then it just evolved from there. Those were her exact words, like it was some unavoidable accident. But 8 weeks isn't an accident. That's a deliberate choice she made repeatedly, day after day. Is she still at the party? Yeah, she's still here acting like she's the one who's been wronged. A handful of people are trying to comfort her, but honestly, most people look extremely uncomfortable. Michelle is furious. I'm pretty sure she wants Emma gone. Thanks for being honest with me, I managed to say, and my voice cracked slightly on the final words. What are you planning to do? I honestly don't know yet. We ended the call, and I remained there in the darkness for another hour. Then something shifted in my mind, and I started thinking with clarity for the first time all evening. I opened my laptop and accessed our joint checking account, the one we'd established for shared expenses about 2.5 years prior. We'd both deposit a fixed amount monthly, and it was supposed to simplify our finances. I began scrolling through the transaction history from recent months. Initially, everything appeared routine. Rent payment, utilities, internet service, grocery stores. Then I spotted charges that made no sense. A restaurant called the Garden Room, an expensive farm-to-table place downtown I'd never set foot in, $195 9 weeks ago. Another charge there 4 weeks later, $230. Then there was a hotel transaction from 5 weeks back, $385 at a boutique hotel approximately 20 minutes from our apartment. Emma had told me she was attending a professional development conference in Seattle that weekend. I took screenshots of everything. Every single transaction that didn't add up. There were 13 total. Update 1. I didn't sleep that entire night. Couldn't. I just remained there on the sofa, laptop open, staring at those financial records and thinking about every deception she'd fed me. Every time she'd claimed she was working late. Every time she'd been too exhausted to make plans with me on weekends. Every time she'd initiated an argument over something meaningless. And now I understood it was probably guilt eating at her. Around 6:15 in the morning, I heard our apartment door unlock. Emma entered quietly, clearly trying not to disturb me. She was still wearing the same outfit from the party and looked completely drained. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier. She froze completely when she noticed me. "We need to have a conversation," I stated flatly. She dropped her bag on the counter and folded her arms defensively. Her makeup was smeared beneath her eyes, and her hair looked disheveled. "I know I really messed things up last night. I'd been drinking, and I didn't intend to. How long have you been sleeping with Ryan?" All color vanished from her face instantly. "What? Don't insult me with lies." Jessica informed me, and I discovered the bank records. I rotated the laptop so she could view the screen with all the highlighted transactions. She stared at the charges for a prolonged moment, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for words. Then her posture collapsed inward. It happened. It wasn't premeditated. 8 weeks isn't it just happened, Emma. 8 weeks is a relationship. 8 weeks is a conscious decision you made every single day. I was confused, she said, her voice breaking. You and I have been together for so long, and I started questioning if this was genuinely what I wanted for my future. Everything felt so predictable and stagnant. Ryan made me feel, I don't know, alive again. Like life wasn't so monotonous. So you chose to humiliate me in front of 50 people because you were experiencing boredom? I could feel rage building in my chest now, sharp and hot. That's not a fair characterization. No. What's not fair is that I invested 5 years constructing a life with someone who was actively auditioning for replacements behind my back. What's not fair is that I was researching financing plans for an engagement ring while you were spending our combined funds on hotel rooms with my brother-in-law's cousin. She started crying then, but it felt calculated. The tears seemed like a manipulation tactic. I'm truly sorry. I genuinely am. I made a terrible mistake. Can we just discuss this? Can we attempt to work through it? There's nothing to discuss. I want you moved out of this apartment by the end of the week. This is my home too. The lease has only my name on it. You moved in after I'd already been living here 18 months. Check the documentation if you question that. She stared at me as if I'd physically struck her. You're seriously going to kick me out? You destroyed what we had the moment you got into bed with Ryan. I'm simply making it official. She left the kitchen without responding. I heard her bedroom door slam, then heard her crying through the wall. I felt no sympathy whatsoever. Update 2. Emma moved out 6 days later. She attempted to claim various furniture pieces that I'd purchased before we'd even started dating. The coffee table, a bookshelf, even the high-end blender, but I'd kept the purchase receipts archived on my computer, and she backed down immediately. The entire process was cold and transactional. We barely exchanged words except for logistical necessities. I'm taking the dish set. Those were a wedding gift to me from my grandmother. Fine. That sort of thing. Her parents arrived with a moving truck on Saturday morning. Her father refused to make eye contact with me, and her mother gave me this condescending look, as if I was somehow the person who destroyed everything. I didn't bother attempting to explain the situation to them. Ryan, however, tried reaching out. He sent me an extensive text message 3 days after Emma moved out, apologizing profusely, claiming he never intended for the situation to escalate this far and that he respected me too much to allow this to damage my relationship with David. The message was 7 paragraphs long, filled with phrases like, I accept complete responsibility, and I hope eventually we can move beyond this. I didn't respond. I deleted it immediately and blocked his number. 3 days later, David called me. I heard what happened, he said. Ryan gave me his version, but I wanted to hear your perspective. I provided him with the complete story. Every detail, the public humiliation, the affair, the financial records, the hotel charges, all the lies. David listened without interrupting once. David remained quiet for an extended period after I finished. Then he said, I'm genuinely sorry, man. I had absolutely no idea this was happening. Ryan's my cousin, but what he did was completely indefensible. I'm not making any excuses for his behavior. I appreciate that. For what it's worth, Michelle already removed Emma from the wedding. She was supposed to be a bridesmaid. And I'm keeping Ryan on an extremely short leash. He's no longer in the wedding party either. Michelle wanted him completely uninvited, but he's still family, so he can attend the ceremony only. That's it. No reception. That provided me some minor satisfaction, but it didn't erase the betrayal. Nothing could erase that. Update 3. Approximately 3 weeks after Emma moved out, I received a message from her on Instagram. It was lengthy and incoherent, essentially claiming she'd made the most catastrophic mistake of her existence and desperately wanted to meet to talk. She said Ryan had revealed himself to be completely different from what she'd believed, and that she'd realized I was the person she genuinely wanted to build a life with. She said she'd been reckless and impulsive, and that what we'd shared was authentic. I didn't even fully open the message. I just blocked her on Instagram, Facebook, and added her email to my spam filter for good measure. But here's where the situation becomes particularly interesting. A mutual friend, Chris, contacted me several days ago and revealed the actual reason Emma was attempting to reconcile. Apparently, Ryan had been seeing someone else the entire duration of his involvement with Emma, some woman from his firm named Vanessa. When Emma discovered this, she saw messages on his phone. She confronted him, and he essentially told her she was just a temporary distraction. He said he'd never intended for it to become serious, that it was purely physical entertainment, and that Vanessa was his actual girlfriend. Emma was absolutely devastated, according to Chris. He said she appeared at his apartment at 10:30 at night sobbing, asking him what she should possibly do now. And then, to compound everything, she lost her job that same week. She'd been arriving late consistently, missing critical deadlines, and she'd gotten into a screaming confrontation with her supervisor about some administrative error. Her supervisor had apparently been lenient for weeks, but the argument was the breaking point. Chris said she'd been calling around to mutual friends attempting to persuade someone to convince me to take her back. Nobody would help her. Several people told her explicitly that her actions were unforgivable. Final update. It's been 3 weeks since that evening at David's celebration. I'm still processing everything that happened, but honestly, I feel considerably lighter. The apartment is quieter, certainly, but it's mine again. I completely rearranged the furniture, eliminated anything that reminded me of her, threw out photographs, donated some books she'd abandoned, even purchased new bedding. I started attending the gym in the mornings before heading to work, and I've been reading substantially more. Small actions that make me feel like I'm reclaiming ownership of my life. David and I remain close. His wedding is in 8 weeks, and I'm still invited. I'm actually back in the wedding party as a groomsman. Ryan won't be at the reception. David remained firm on that boundary. Apparently, Ryan and Emma attempted to make their relationship work for roughly a week after she discovered Vanessa's existence, but that imploded rapidly. Ryan blocked her number, and she attempted showing up at his apartment once. He threatened to contact the police if she didn't leave his property. Last I heard, she moved back to her parents' house about 90 minutes outside the city. She's unemployed and apparently spending most of her time in her childhood bedroom. Jessica mentioned she's been posting vague, melancholic quotes on social media, the type that are transparently about me but never actually mention my name. I haven't heard from her directly since I blocked her on everything. Jessica checks in with me occasionally, which I appreciate. She feels guilty for not recognizing the affair earlier, but I've told her it's absolutely not her fault. Emma was calculated. She covered her tracks effectively. If Jessica had known, she would have informed me immediately. I'm not dating anyone currently. I'm not prepared for that, but I'm also not resentful. I'm just relieved. Relieved I discovered the truth before I actually married her. Relieved I didn't waste another 5 years. Relieved I didn't propose with that emerald ring and then uncover all of this a year into a marriage. Relieved I walked away when I did with my self-respect intact. Sometimes I reflect on that moment at the party when she screamed at me in front of everyone. At the time, it felt like the absolute worst moment of my entire life. Now I recognize it was actually a gift. She showed me precisely who she was, and I got to walk away before I was legally or financially bound to her permanently.